Today's movie is going to be about the slavery in Jamaica. It's called The Long Song, and it's a well-done mini-series if you haven't seen it yet. July of the Amity Plantation tells the story of her life. It takes place in Jamaica during the final years of slavery in the 1830s. July is Caroline Mortimer's house slave, and Caroline is the sister of a plantation owner, John Howarth. Despite July being troublesome, Caroline won't dare whip or send her away. It's because the missus doesn't know how to do things on her own. This mayonnaise is dumb as hell, can't even dress herself. Sugar cane grows well in the tropics' fertile lands, and it's in Amity Plantation that July's mother, Miss Kitty, was subjected to slavery. One of the overseers, Tam Dewar, assaulted her multiple times. Miss Kitty got pregnant and gave birth to a baby girl she named July. But the midwife is like, "But it's December." One day, Miss Kitty and July caught the eye of Caroline, who has just arrived on the island. She's staying with her brother and wants to take July to train her as her maid. John treats them as if they're animals.
Look at the legs, Caroline, like tree trunks. Come on, she won't bite.
And look at your fugly face, John. John permits July to be Caroline's house slave, saying that the child is his property anyway. Miss Kitty begs them not to take the child, but John is deaf to her pleas. That day, Caroline decides to call the girl Marguerite. She tells the child that her mother has been sold away. But the truth is, Miss Kitty regularly sneaks to the main house to check on July. Years have passed and Caroline has completely relied on July and the other house staff. It's Christmas and Caroline wants to throw a lavish party. When the head staff, Godfrey, reminds her that she doesn't have enough money, she strikes him across the face. Someone slap this ugly single hoe. Unlike the slaves who walk with their heads down, the young, charming, and full-on Mr. Nimrod walks with his chin up and brags that he's a free man. He has bought his freedom for £100, and Nimrod has always liked July. John is not happy about the party, but Caroline insists she needs friends and a chance to remarry because her kitty cat has been purring for too long. While on the fields, July witnesses the mistreatment of the slaves. On the night of the party, John asks the guests to stay vigilant. Apparently, the abolitionists in England are gaining support, which results in rebellion among the slaves. Outside, the house staff and field workers are partying hard. July notices the Miss Clara. She is biracial, but the hateful type that looks down on how dark July is. July says that she's also biracial and that Tam Dewar is her father, but Miss Clara doesn't believe her. Just then, Godfrey sends her back to the house to get some wine. Unfortunately, July is caught stealing by Mr. Sadler. The old man calls her out and gropes her. Mr. Sadler is so fat back, he has difficulty speaking and breathing at the same time. Suddenly, soldiers barge in and announce that slaves are burning down plantations in the west. The men are ordered to take arms, leaving Caroline with no one to protect her. When Nimrod arrives, Caroline is scared.
It be a black man, missus.
Nimrod tells everyone what he saw. According to him, slaves are killing white men, and there's not one left in town. He says white people have boarded the ship when the uprising began. Then he tells July to take Caroline to town for her own safety. Godfrey refuses to drive the missus to town without payment, and for the first time, he stands up for himself and pushes Caroline to the ground. Then he orders her to address July by her real name. Caroline obliges and Godfrey finally boards her things onto the cart. With no one at the great house, July pretends to be the mistress herself. Nimrod walks in, flirts before finally admitting that he's looking for a wife. While the island continues to burn, July and Nimrod are getting intimate in John's bedroom. Oh yes, that scene had my coochie steaming. The next day, however, July's masters return, so they rush to get dressed and hide under the bed. John is so burdened after killing a lot of people whilst trying to stop the rebellion. Overwhelmed, he prays to God before fatally shooting himself. One less ugly person in the world. Back then, killing oneself is a crime, and the family's property could be taken by the crown. Tam Dewar wants to help Caroline keep the plantation. Just then, he catches Nimrod hiding and decides to blame him for John's death. But before Tam Dewar can shoot Nimrod, July jumps in and saves him. Afterward, the two hide in the workers' village, but Tam Dewar finds them quickly. Nimrod keeps saying that he's a free man, but Tam Dewar ignores him and shoots him dead. Why couldn't the fatback man die of diabetes? He then turns his attention to July, but before he can hurt her, Miss Kitty arrives and stabs him in his back rolls. Unfortunately, their reunion is cut short because the overseers discover what happened to Tamara. Not long after that, all that have participated in the uprising, all that are still alive, are hanged. One of them is Miss Kitty. A few months later, July gives birth to a boy and leaves him in front of a church in hopes that the child will be free from slavery. She is spared from death and is sent back to the fields. But Caroline soon picks her up because now Caroline Mortimer is officially Amity Plantation's new mistress, and she needs July to manage the house for her because Caroline dumb AF. Sometime later, the new overseer arrives, announcing that within a few days, slavery will finally be abolished. As promised, July soon becomes a free woman. Caroline has taught her how to read and write so she can keep track of the compensation Caroline receives for every slave she owns that gets freed. Robert Goodwin, the new overseer, came from a good family. His father taught him to treat slaves with kindness. He also thinks slavery is an abomination. Caroline quickly falls for him, but only for shallow reasons. Robert soon announces to the few slaves who have remained that they are free to leave if they want. However, if they were to stay, they would have to pay rent. He then promises that they will be paid well. Okay, we can get with that. While giving Caroline a bath, whenever she says something weird, July would scrub her hair hard. Then when July says she wants to live elsewhere when she's free, Caroline wonders how July would even care for herself. So July throws cold water on her. One day, Caroline sends July to invite Robert for dinner. While talking, Robert finds out July's real name and asks to address her by it. Because Robert is a gentleman, July starts to like him as well. A few days later, July sees Miss Clara in town. Miss Clara brags about being married to a white man who is a lawyer. She yet again criticizes July's dark skin tone. Just then, Robert sees July and offers her a ride back to the plantation. I'm sure she wants to ride his plantain. On the way back, July keeps thinking how she can be like Miss Clara. July tells Robert that her father was the Scottish overseer of the plantation, so Robert offers to lend her a book about Scotland. Caroline sees the two together and feels a pang of jealousy. Though Caroline tries to keep them apart, July finds a way to visit Robert. While talking, Robert suddenly kisses July. Before they cross the line, he stops and tells her to leave. He doesn't want to take advantage of July, so for a couple of weeks he avoids visiting the great house. But Caroline wants Robert's white D for herself.
July knew those blue eyes of his still be hungry for her.
And she was still hungry for him. One day he confesses that he's always loved July, and that he came up with a plan for them to be together. When July returns to the house, Caroline declares that she's about to marry Robert Goodwin. This way, Robert can have a secret love affair with July in the guise of being married to Caroline. When the wedding finally happens, Robert gives his virginity to July while Caroline lies alone. Caroline hears the noises that night and the giggling the following day. She knows something is happening under her own roof, and she's furious she's not the one getting pounded. Robert believes he's doing good to both women. Now he's no longer just an overseer, but a lord and owner of the plantation. Meanwhile, the black people of Amity have more courage to stand against their overseer. They know they are already free and won't tolerate being whipped ever again. Robert's affair is now an open secret that Caroline has to tolerate.
Well, I'd very much like to taste her hot pepper pickle.
Excuse my finest pardon? Robert considers July to be his true wife, and they soon have a baby girl named Emily. Of course, Caroline is devastated that it's not her. But the Amity plantation soon faces significant problems. It's December, and those crops need to be harvested. Because there are fewer workers, Robert demands that the remaining black people work for 7 days a week instead of 5. All the workers refused. July tries convincing them that Robert is different and that he's an honest man. Afterwards, she encourages Robert to reconsider. However, Robert sticks to his offers and tries to get the workers to agree. They still say no, and Robert leaves, defeated and frustrated. Caroline watches in a sense of vindication. She's glad that Robert finally realizes that the black people he treated so well will not repay his kindness. When July tries comforting him, Robert swears he'll make the workers beg for work. If I were July, my clit for Robert would instantly shrink. As a resolution, Robert raises the rent for the workers' houses. When confronted, Robert says it's his right as a master to raise the rent, but the workers can have the money if they work for 7 days instead of 5. Still, the workers say no. Even July can no longer reason with Robert. This, however, gives Caroline a chance to get closer to him. To protest, the workers refuse to work the fields for 3 days, and the canes begin to rot under the sun. Robert has grown even more frustrated. If this continues, the Amity plantation will soon fail. So that night, he draws a map of his estate. The next morning, he instructs his overseers to burn the workers' crops to lure the men out, then to throw their belongings on the road. Robert's last resort is to threaten and scare his workers into submission. Anyone who will continue to defy him will be evicted. As the village burns, Caroline sits with July and Emily. She's worried about her husband and blames the abolitionists for their ideology. July feels her stomach turn as she watches the village burn, and Caroline is weirdly fascinated with Emily's light skin, almost acting like it's her child. When Robert returns, he declares his victory. He is sure the workers will show up the next day. But when no one shows up the next morning, Robert starts to harvest the crops all by himself. You literally could have done this in the beginning with your employees. He says all the workers have fled. Robert is too upset that he fails to recognize July and threatens to hurt her, and calling her the N-word. Luckily, Caroline springs into action to save July. Amity's workers have found a new place on the island. Together, they put in the work to make it their new home. Robert's health declines and he refuses to drink. Caroline prohibits July from seeing him, stating that the doctor said it wouldn't be good for Robert to see any black person, given the state he's in. But Robert calls Emily's name, so Caroline asks July for the baby. Robert gains back his strength, and the mistress says they will soon leave for England. July realizes something has changed between her and Robert. One night, she even hears Caroline slurping on Robert's glizzy in the bedroom. To get back at them, July has a pot of cockroaches delivered to the dining table. A few days later, Robert and Caroline leave for England without saying goodbye. July's friend Molly offers to hold Emily so July can finally take a rest. But when July wakes up to get her child, she finds out that Molly has boarded the ship with Robert and his wife. She has the baby with her. The pain is so great that July has lost the strength she has. Having nowhere else to go, she searches the island to find the workers from Amity. She finds them, and they nurse her back to health. Before she knows it, the years have quickly passed. Now July is an old woman. The people she had lived with died because the land was poor, and they starved to death. Now she's being accused of stealing a hen. The case is quickly dismissed, and she's free to go. A man named Thomas Kinsman invites her to his house. The man reveals that he was raised and educated in England, but he was left in front of a Baptist church 34 years ago in Jamaica. All he knows is that his mother is July of Amity Plantation. July is shocked to see her son, now all grown up and with a family. He has made a fortune out of a printing business. He encourages July to write the story of her life. She does, hoping that one day her story will reach Emily. But for now, July enjoys living a good life with a family to look after her, and seeing all her grandkids running around fills her with joy. What happened to July was tragic. Robert only saw her as his property, a sort of fetish, and never actually loved her ever. Caroline was also a despicable, horrible human, and Molly is a traitor. What did you guys think of this one?
Did y'all like that one? Honey, well, make sure you like and leave us a comment. I try to respond to as many as I can. And if you like 2-bit, Lifetime, or just straight up trifling movies, make sure you subscribe for real. For more videos, you can click here or here.